Welcome, everyone, to the training webinar series Eyefinity Encompass Specialty Contact Lens Workflow presentation. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to your questions throughout the presentation. You can enter them by clicking on the Q&A icon on the right of your screen. My name is Linda Park, and it is my pleasure to be with you today to introduce Jeremy Law. Jeremy has more than 15 years of eye care experience and is a former optometric technician and office manager at an optometry practice. He's currently a software solutions product manager at Eyefinity, where he collaborates with doctors and Eyefinity engineers to design enhancements of EHR in Eyefinity Encompass. You can visit him in the Eyefinity booth at AnyVision Expo. He enjoys playing a variety of musical instruments, including guitar, violin, and harp. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, I'm looking forward to maybe hearing some of your questions in the chat. I know I've probably worked, I'm just looking at the attendee list. I know I've worked with a couple of the folks on the call before, so good to see you again. Feel free as we're going through here today to leave any questions for me. As Linda mentioned, I've got some experience in eye care. I'm not a doctor, so when it gets to specific questions around fitting, like scleral lenses, for example, I may not be able to answer those directly, but I'm happy to take any of those offline. Really, what we're going to get into today is an overview of the tools you have at your disposal for documenting specialty contact lens fittings within Encompass. So when we say specialty lenses, we're talking about RGPs, hybrids, sclerals, things like that. So we won't be covering how-tos when it comes to fitting specialty lenses, but by the end of this webinar, my goal is to have you be familiar with all the features within the EHR that you can take advantage of when it comes to fitting custom contact lenses. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Bear with me for just a second as I go ahead and bring up the application here. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that all right. We are going to start with the web application today. If you use the web application or use the iPad app, don't worry, we're going to cover both, but just want to give an overview for everybody. So we'll start here. So to get into it, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to see. So in March, we released version 7.9 of the EHR, and at that time we made some pretty sweeping changes to how specialty contact lens prescriptions and fittings and assessments are handled within the system. So if I go into the vision exam, you're on the web app, you'll see we have this tab, which used to say RGP hybrid contacts. Now it says specialty contact lens. And you'll see that this screen looks very different, but from here, we'll be able to document all of our fitting details. If I were to use the image management button at the top here, I'd also be able to review things like my corneal topography, any of those pertinent details. I might come in here and look at my keratometry and review that as well and kind of say, yep, this person's definitely got some keratoconus going on. And from this screen, this is where I'm going to do the majority of my work. Now, like I mentioned, if you've been using the system for a while, you probably remember the old screen and what it looked like. And it was, one big table with a couple dozen different fields. And what we found out from working with over 100 doctors who are using Encompass was that when you're fitting these lenses, you really don't need to see all of those fields. Most folks are doing there's, a handful of lenses that you're fitting and you really only need the parameters for those specific lenses. So what we did is we made this screen completely customizable. It's pretty much a toolbox that you get to set up for yourself. So if you see the additional fields button here, this is where you can come in and customize what this screen looks like. And you only have to do this once. Once you customize it, you can kind of set it and forget it. But I just want to walk through this really quick for anybody who hasn't done this before. So you can see at the top, I have a section that's called visible fields, and right now it's empty. And below I have a section called hidden fields, and it's got everything in it. So for me today, I'm going to be fitting a Synergize lens. And for Synergize, a lot of times they want the HVID or horizontal visible iris distance. I'm also going to be documenting the skirt and sag, since this is a scleral lens. I might want the overall diameter and, just for fun, maybe I will put in, sphere 2 or sill 2. and I want access to, of course. So as soon as I hit save, now I've got my screen just the way I want it. Or maybe it's not exactly the way I want it and I want to make some changes, right? I have all these fields, but maybe this isn't really the order that I typically document my findings in. So maybe I want sag above skirt, and I want sphere 2 and sill 2 and axis 2 up here. So I can go ahead and hit save. And just like that, the fields have rearranged into the order that I want. And just for fun, we'll say, you know what, maybe I've changed my mind. I don't want these additional refractive measurement fields. So I'll go ahead and do that, hit save, and there we go. One thing you might be wondering is when it comes to these additional fields, well, what if what if I've just joined a practice and I'm seeing patients that, a doctor's been treating for years at this practice, and I'm seeing this patient for the first time. What if they're working with a lens that does have radius 2 or width 2 or has optical zone specified? You don't have to worry about that. If you're importing a prescription that has a field that is in your hidden fields, we will still always show it. So you never have to worry that a field that's in your hidden fields is not going to show some historical data that is relevant to the patient's presentation today. I'll show you an example of that a little bit later, but for now, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to look for a particular lens. In this case, the patient, I know they've got a lot going on. I know that they need some help reading up close. So I'm going to actually look for the Synergize multifocal EDOF lens. So you can see here, I skipped past the manufacturer field entirely and just went straight into looking for the lens that I'm looking for. I just had to type in a few letters, and now I'm going to select Synergize multifocal, and it's going to backfill the manufacturer and lens type for me. So that's great. And in the case of this lens, when I'm working with the Synergize multifocal lens, all I really need are the refractive measurements, and then I do need to measure and record the patient's horizontal visible iris distance, like I mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my refraction history, and I'm just going to see, I've got, there's a test patient, so there's obviously a lot going on here, but I'm going to see, what their manifest was, and it looks like they're -3, -2. So we're just going to go ahead and enter in a few parameters. So we'll say -3, -2. I think we had them at axis 20, and we actually had that on the same eye. So I'm going to copy over here, and I believe the axis was a little bit different for this eye. So we'll make that change, but you can see it carried everything else over. And then for the horizontal visible iris distance, I'm just going to input that really quick, and then we're going to be done. So one thing you'll notice is I didn't enter in the base curve or the diameter. And in this case, I don't need to do that for this particular lens. Unlike soft contact lenses, where to create a trial prescription, I need to have those things specified, we know that the way that you work with custom contact lenses, you really need the flexibility to not necessarily enter all of those things. So you really don't actually have to enter in much of anything at all to save, what you would call a quotes trial specialty contact lens prescription, like what we're working with here. It's not like you're giving the patient a trial to walk away with, but this allows you to have something that you can use when you're on the phone with the consultant, or something that you give to your front desk when they go online to, email this, or maybe they want to fax that or enter it into some online calculator. That's really what the trial RX in the context of a specialty contact lens workflow is designed for in our system. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. In this case, you could also document the assessment and contact lens regimen. So if I wanted to document something related to the clearance for the patient, I could do that here. I'm not going to get into too much of that today, but just as an example, I'll kind of show you what this looks like. So example assessment note, we'll just put in here, and I will, I'm not really going to do too much with the fitting at this point. We're going to wait until the actual lens comes back from the lab. But in terms of the notes, again, you can also have notes on the trial prescription that will either display or not display based on what you've done there. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And you can see here is my my trial prescription, and there's really not much going on here, but this is all the info that I need in order to work with the consultant at the lab to get a lens manufactured for the patient. So I'm going to go ahead and send that trial over, And that's going to do a couple things. So one, that's going to give the information to my front desk so they know what to input on the Synergize online website to get that lens ordered for the patient. It's also going to send over the product code for the Synergize multifocal hybrid multifocal lens. So what that's going to do is if I've set up pricing, then it's going to generate pricing so that I can bill the patient for the specific materials we're ordering for them. So that is the process of creating a trial on the web. Now let's talk a little bit about, we mentioned pricing, but we also need to think about our diagnoses and plans. So I'm going to go back to my visit note. And from here, you'll see I've already, we're already in the middle of a visit, right? So we've already done the rest of our assessment. We've got our IOPs, we refracted them and all that good stuff. So now I'm going to simply document the eye exam. And we're going to give them, I'm going to say I measured their cup to disc. This is part of a comprehensive eye exam, we'll say. So I didn't dilate them. So I'm going to mark that as contraindicated for today. And then I'm going to go in and document my diagnosis. So if I'm going to document this as a comprehensive eye exam, I probably want to have, myopia as my diagnosis. So I can go ahead and do that. I can say I've got my refraction, counseling, my follow-up when I want to see them again. All of that is pretty easily doable from the screen. But let's say, in this case, this patient, you can see from their keratometry, they have keratoconus, and that's the reason why we're fitting them with this lens. So what I might do alternatively is I might make keratoconus the main diagnosis. So I'm going to search for keratoconus. We are going to go ahead and do a couple of things. So I'm going to recommend that if you're fitting a patient with a specialty lens, you don't actually use the contact lens assessment plan. I'm actually going to recommend you use the contact lens fitting plan. We'll talk about why that is in a second. But let's say we also counsel them on keratoconus, we did a refraction, and maybe we, if we did some corneal topography, we could document that here as well. And we'll say that we also want to see them for a follow-up in a shorter time frame than we normally would. So I'm going to save that. We're going to say it's in both eyes. And I'm not going to go through all of the plans since most of you are pretty familiar, I'm sure, with how counseling is set up and how to customize the refraction plan and how to document your findings when it comes to a like an imaging plan like this. What I want to focus on is this contact lens fitting plan up here. So you can see if I resume this plan, there are some options that I can choose from. So I can say whether there's a new fit or a refit or a follow-up. In this case, we're going to say it's a new fit for this patient. And I'm going to be fitting them with a, with a scleral lens. So I'm going to check that box. And when it comes to billing, this is something that you'll want to become familiar with. You can see we have all these options here. This is where you're going to generate your V code, like your service code that you want to bill the patient for. So if you set up the pricing for any of these codes, this is how you're going to get the code to show up on the practice management side of Encompass. So in this case, we're going to do a scleral contact lens. So I want this code to generate V2531. So I'll go ahead and select that. And as soon as I hit done, it would generate that. Now, really quickly, I'll talk about this section here. So if for some reason you didn't really want to use the assessment section that I just showed you, you can, of course, document your assessment here. There are also some details related to the fitting and your limbal zone, landing zone, central clearance, things like that you can document here. And so you might wonder, well, why would I use this over, for example, the section in the vision exam? Well, for things that are related to the assessment, you don't necessarily need those on the prescription. And this would allow you to do protocols if you wanted to. So if you have a keratoconus protocol, you could bake in and say, I've got my keratoconus scleral protocol. I've got my keratoconus RGP or hybrid lens protocol. You could automate a lot of this if you want to. Me personally, I don't really use this protocol when I'm demoing too much for a scleral fit, but I'm showing this off just in case you're curious if that's something you want to investigate, because it's a plan, you can actually create a protocol for this. But for the purposes of today, all that I really care about is saying that this is a new fit, checking off that I'm doing a scleral lens, and I care about the billing here. I want to generate this V2531 code. So that's all I'm going to do. And I'll hit done. Looking at our coding here, you can see I've got my comprehensive eye exam. I've got my keratoconus code associated here with my 92025. I've got my refraction code, and finally, I've got my V code that I just generated. If, for example, this was some follow-up, or you're seeing the patient after their comprehensive eye exam, this is like a fee for service. You're not charging them for the comprehensive eye exam. You could always, mark this as a no E&M visit by clicking override suggested billing code and selecting this. If I do that, then it's not going to generate that 92014, but it'll still give my staff all the other information they need to charge the patient out. So in this case, I am doing it as part of a comprehensive eye exam, so I will go ahead and clear the override, actually, and then we should be good to go. From here, I'll just go ahead and hit send. I'll need to refresh the screen, it looks like, but I can go ahead and I can send my charges, and I had already sent my trial, so I don't need to do that now. So let's say, we're wrapping it up. I'm going to finalize my visit note, and all that's looking great. And now we'll go ahead and skip ahead to the next visit. So I'm going to go ahead and pivot away from the web application, since I mentioned we were going to take a look at the iPad app. Give me just a second to bring that up. It'll take me about 30 seconds. While I'm doing that, Linda, are there any questions in the chat? Anybody, feel free if you got questions right now to throw those into the chat.
I do not see any questions right now, no.
Okay. Let's see here. Looks like we are good. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the iPad app. Now, I'm going to be using a little mouse so you can see my movements. So I'll be a little bit slower than I normally am, but as long as you're patient with me, I think we should be able to get through this pretty quick. So looking at the iPad app, you can see right now I'm on the detailed visit overview. If this doesn't look familiar to you, I know a lot of folks use the tile view. I'm going to use the detailed view today just for a couple of reasons, which I'll explain as we go through. But I definitely encourage you to take a look if you've never used this before. It's pretty similar to the web application. If you've been using the web application and you think, I might want to try out the iPad, but I'm a little nervous that it might be different. If you use this view here, you'll probably find it's pretty familiar to you. So definitely encourage you to take a look at that. But you can see here, based on the chief complaint that my tech already recorded, right? It's a couple weeks later. We're here for a contact lens fitting follow-up. We've already recorded the vision exam, some details. So it looks like they went through autorefraction. We got their wearing RX, their keratometry, and all of that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started with our fitting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the vision exam. And on the iPad, it's a little bit different from the web. We just have one tab that's called Contact Lens. And here I can either create a contact lens, like a soft disposable contact lens, or a specialty lens trial. So I'm going to hit Add Specialty Lens Trial. And from here, there's a couple things that I can do. So I'm going to just start right off the bat by importing that trial prescription that I created for the patient at their last visit. So I'll click that. I'll tap import, and I'm just going to take a look at things. So I want to see what's been recorded today to see if anything has changed since when the patient last came in. So I'm going to tap show refractive measurements, and here I can see their keratometry, their habitual or their wearing RX that they came in with. If I want to take a look at their autorefraction, I just tap that. Maybe I want to see what the manifest is, and yeah, all that's looking pretty good. So I'll go ahead and I'll close that back up again. And now I've actually got the lens from the lab. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually enter in the values for this lens. So I'm looking at the order form from the lab. I'm just going to punch in a few details here. Looks like base curve 7.67. The diameter is 14.5. The HVID I'm not going to touch, but we do have, I've measured the skirt. 44, and the sag looks like it's about 3,600. So I'll go ahead and put that in. This patient, somehow miraculously, it's pretty similar between both eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and just record that on this side as well. and make sure I get that base curve as well. So I'll do that. Okay. So at this point, I've got the lens on the patient, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and refract them, or I'm going to go ahead and check their visual acuity. So let's say that because, I'm such an amazing doctor and the scleral lens is fitting really well and helping address the keratoconus that, I've actually got them to 20/20. Look at that. So I just tapped realized I wasn't using my mouse there. I tapped the 20/20 OU button to do that. Something I also forgot is that this lens, it's a multifocal lens, so I'm going to put in my add power here. And with that add power entered, I can say, you know what, I've also got them reading up close 20/20. So pretty nice. I'm now going to look at my assessment. I'm going to mark everything as normal, but maybe they're telling me that they feel that the lens is a little bit uncomfortable, so I'm going to check that. But overall, we're looking pretty good here. I'm not really going to worry too much about the wearing schedule, but if I could say, that they're, going to be wearing it as needed. For the disinfecting solution, I'm going to, just kind of recommend a few things here. If I need to mark the dot, I can do that here as well. In terms of my notes, again, here's where I might want to document something related to, their landing zone. If I'm seeing some edge lift, if I'm seeing anything in regards to their clearance, if I want to document where the hash mark is or the notch, I can do that here. And all that will just be part of my assessment, not part of the actual, lens fitting details. If I did an over refraction, I can of course do that as well from right here. And as I mentioned previously on the web application here, you can do any RX notes that you either want to be on the printout, or maybe these are just notes that you want to they're just privately for you, something you don't want the patient to see. Maybe, you can say, this patient will probably be uncomfortable with the lens. We could try some things in the future, but this is probably as good as we're going to get. So at this point, I've got all my lens details entered. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save my prescription. So I've got my trial. I'm not going to send it because I don't really need to send this over. What I really want to do is just create a final. So I'm going to tap Final RX, just like that. I've got my final RX created. Anybody who's been using the system for a long time knows that it didn't always work that smoothly, but this is definitely, just one click and I'm done. So now I've got my final. I do want to send this to the front. And if I want to print a copy for the patient from right here, of course I can. This is what the final prescription ends up looking like for the patient. As you can see, I've got all my details on there. I'm going to let the patient go with this lens because we got him there with just one fitting. Obviously, that might not be the case. If I have a patient I'm seeing and they're just having trouble adjusting to the lens, or we're not getting quite what we need from the lab, I might have several of these visits where I'm creating trials, finalizing it, sending the patient on their way, and having them come back. But in this case, we'll just pretend that we got everything right on the first try. So at this point, I've got my RX. I'm going to go back to the visit overview. And this is where this single screen workflow really saves me a lot of time if I'm on the iPad. So rather than going into the ocular exam room, I'm actually just going to do everything from out here. I'm going to tap simple exam. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark their cup to disc ratio, which again is just coming in as 0.3 in both eyes. Under the options here, sorry, I'm going to use my mouse here. So under the options, we're going to say, no, we didn't dilate them today. Wasn't necessary. And I'm going to go ahead and hit done. Just like that, I've got my slit lamp exam documented. As you can see right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to document my impressions and plans. This is going to be pretty much a review from what we did on the web app. But you can see here, I'll go in. I will search for keratoconus. This would obviously be faster if you have a Bluetooth keyboard. But I don't have one hooked up right now. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to do a fitting. We're going to cancel them, refraction, and we'll skip the corneal topography for today. We'll do the follow-up, and we'll go from there. So in this case, we're treating it in both eyes. And in terms of my documentation, you can see all that's been generated for me. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a stable keratoconus for my ICD-10 expert there. So now I get the correct ICD-10 code. And then again, if I'm looking at this contact lens fitting plan, this is very similar to how it looks on the web application. But just to show you the difference here, I've got these little bubbles here. So I'm going to scroll down and I actually want to document that I did a scleral lens, and we want to, if I'm waiting to the end to build a patient for the service, then I can select the scleral code here that I used earlier. But in this case, I already built the patient up front, so I'm not going to generate this code again. So I really don't need to select anything here. If I wanted to do anything with the assessment here, I could. Again, right, we have the opportunity to document the fit, the comfort, rotation. If we go to this tab here, there's some other measurements we can record, including my clearance, landing zone, limbal zone, all of that. If I want to review the imaging, let's say that I'm using image management, again, I can always just jump to my corneal topography from right here, and it should be pretty easy to bring that up. We're not really talking about image management today, so I'll skip over that for now. But of course, I can look at their historical data as well if I wanted to, pop over to the iLog, and take a look at any of that if I wanted to as well. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save my plan. And in this case, you know what? Maybe I want to see them again for a visit to just make sure everything's going well, because I'm going to let them wear the lens out. So we'll say that, if I had any of these regular protocols set up, I could do that. But we'll say we're just going to follow up for their next diagnostic in, let's say, I want to see them in 1 week. So I'll do that. I'll hit done. And I'm pretty much all set. The only thing that I might change is, I've already seen this patient for their comprehensive eye exam. So I'm actually going to say that I want to override the suggested billing code here. And I am going to make this a no E&M visit because I don't want to bill them twice for that comprehensive eye exam. Okay, so at this point, I've already sent over my RX, so I will just go ahead and send my fees, and we're good to go. Now, one thing I do want to show while we've got the iPad here, if I was, let's say that I'm still in my assessment, right? So I'm going to go back into the vision exam, and let's say that I've just wrapped up my assessment of the patient. I see a question in the chat from Tina. How likely is it for a practice to have specialty lenses in the office for a patient to try on? That happens all the time, right? It just depends on the lens you're fitting and your preference as a provider. Some doctors like to design the lens themselves entirely, right? Whereas other lenses like the synergized lens that I just showed, those the expectation is that you're going to work with a consultant on the other end at the manufacturer to help design the parameters of the lens. So in this case, let's pretend, right, I'm seeing this patient and I do have a fitting set here in the office. And one of the things that I want to document is the way that the lens is sitting on the eye, right? If you're used to working from paper, you probably have like a little diagram of the eyes, and you might be thinking, well, how could I do that in the EHR? I don't see the drawing, I don't see that graph anywhere. What you can do, you can do this really from any screen within the visit, is I can tap the More menu, and I can go to Drawing. And from here, this is really one of the differentiating factors when you're working on the iPad, and this is why I recommend it to folks who do a lot of specialty lenses, is I can go in and maybe I'll say I want to just see the external eye diagram, right? And this, because I'm using a mouse, this is going to be pretty ugly. But what you can do is you can document how the lens is moving on the patient's eye, just as if you were to do this on paper. So for example, if it's sort of drifting up a little bit, that's an ugly looking circle, but you just have to be patient with me using the mouse here. But if I'm having any kind of like issues with centration, or if I want to mark like where the notch is or anything like that, I have the ability to do that on the iPad, whereas it's pretty hard for me to do that on the web application. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look and see if this is, if this is something that you are interested in, that you're missing from paper. Just keep in mind, you can always use the drawing tools here on the iPad to document your lens fitting. So I'll go ahead and just save this. It'll be part of the patient's record. And from there, I am pretty much all set to send fees. In this case, I didn't really need to since we're not billing for anything, but I'll go ahead and finalize the visit. And there we go. All right, so we've covered the web application, we've covered the iPad app, we talked a little bit about the drawing tools just now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, at this point, stop sharing my iPad. And of course, come back to it if anybody has any questions. But I'm going to go ahead and bring back our lovely, beautiful slides here. And we'll just go ahead and see, does anybody have any questions for me? Take a look at the chat. If you want to come off mute, if you have access to your microphone, I'll take a look.
Thank you, Jeremy. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Just a reminder to everybody, if you do have a question, please drop them in using the Q&A icon on the right of your screen.
Yeah, and while you're thinking about some questions, I would also I'm going to bring up on screen here a QR code. This is a survey that I would love if you have any experience fitting specialty lenses within the EHR, or you found what you learned today to be particularly helpful, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm looking forward to putting some of this in place at my office. Please, I would love to hear from you. Like I mentioned up top, we really, really rely on the feedback from providers like yourselves to make improvements to the system. So if you scan this QR code by opening the camera on your phone and tapping the link that appears, or Linda, if it's possible to share the link in the chat, then you'll be taken to a very short survey. It's only about 5 minutes long to fill out, but we really would appreciate your feedback. So if you would just take about 5 minutes and leave your comments. If you didn't find this useful, or if you think that there's more that we could do to improve the experience, that's also incredibly helpful. You won't hurt my feelings or anyone else's. So please, we really value your open and honest feedback. I'll be reading through every response alongside with the development team here at Eyefinity. So we all look forward to hearing from you. We'd love to hear more from you. So without further ado, I'm not seeing any questions. So I will pass it back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Jeremy. And just a reminder again to everybody, I did drop a link to that page, to that survey in the Q&A. So if you need to access it or you don't have your phone for the QR code, you can use that link as well. And if you're looking for more training, you can check out our other learning options, which include documentation, tutorials, and walkthroughs, role-based training, additional training webinars, one-on-one virtual training, and on-site training or consultations. You can learn more at eyefinity.com/education. And with that, I would like to thank you, Jeremy, for your time and for the valuable information you shared with us. And thank you all on the line for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. This concludes our presentation.